Never turn, never turn, never turn, never turn around. Hear this big booming voice came yelling at you, yeah, yelling from the clouds. No, baby, don't look back, or you'll be a stack of swords for the rest of your life, the rest of your life. Who'da known, who'da known, who'da known, who'da known he was not bluffing that night. Gotta go. Slip out the back door. Everybody seems to know what they're coming here for. They seem to know what they're after. No, but they're after what she's in. So I gotta go right now. And this night in the sky, it's big golden light, and it's coming to find you. In a matter of time. In this weight of the world, dressed up like a little girl, selling hot dogs and candy on the 4th of July.
Welcome, everybody. I hope you all are doing well today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rebecca, and I'm the communication person here at Rapsky. And thanks for joining us for this introductory session on cooperative facilitation. Getting a little bit of feedback, so okay, that's better. Thank you. And first of all, I just wanted to say that you're in the right place if you're wanting to be able to facilitate and make progress while also being inclusive and tending to cooperation and moving forward at the same time, holding lots of, juggling lots of balls, basically. You're in the right place. And we know firsthand that collaboration can be hard, and we also know that it gets easier with skills and patience and tools that can help us hold ourselves and our team in that complexity. And we also know it's very much worth it and part of the answer to our most pressing challenges. And one thing that a client of ours has shared after working with us for a bit is that they didn't realize they had this idea that sharing leadership and cooperating could be learned. They thought that they just had to have the right type of personality in order to collaborate well. And we believe that's not fully the case. And we'll share a little bit more about the tools and our approaches to this work, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you all as well about what's going on. So with that, I know a lot of you already know us, but for those who are new to us, I do want to share just two quick things about us, and I'm happy to share more too if people have questions. So Round Sky is a worker-owned cooperative, and that means we're a business where the workers own it together. And we believe that there are two main training opportunities when developing leadership and facilitation. And I think it's somewhat unique to us that we combine the two. So the first is really approaching collaboration and leadership through tools and processes. And even if those tools were perfect, not saying they are or that perfect tools exist, we still need the second one, which is our personal development to build self-awareness, to build groundedness, emotional intelligence into our facilitation and to continuously grow. So we have brought in both. We'll be focusing more on the tools today, but we'll share a little bit also about our personal development frameworks as well. And that leads me to the second piece I want to tell you is that we approach our courses and our trainings similarly by including a focus of both the hard skills and tools and the quote soft skills, for lack of a better word, into that work, kind of woven that in. And our main strategic initiative is the Cooperative Leadership Certification Program. And it's been a really great place for people to build capacities in their facilitation. So we'll be pulling from those tools from that course, the tools from that course today. So you'll hear about those and I'll talk about the training in some ways as it feels relevant. So, and I'll share a little bit more about that as well. So with that, I think most people are in here at this point. I want to share some logistics about Zoom. A lot of us are on Zoom more than we'd like to be, but in case this is new to you, the session's being recorded and will be shared with everybody afterward that's registered. And if you have questions, put them in the chat box. Should be a speaking bubble. People have been using it. So move your mouse around. It might be at the top, depending on your screen. And we will leave some time for questions at the end as well. So if you're having questions, put them in the chat box and we'll get to them by the end. And if you have tech issues, you can chat me directly, Rebecca Fisher-McGinty. And if you can, stay on mute for the most part of this. We'll have some breakouts where we'll have some good conversation, but our mics are really good at picking up background noise. And lastly, we have 1 hour. So you may leave with questions. I feel like that's a good thing to leave with questions. It means you're kind of grappling with it. And we'll get to what we can. And there will be more of these in the future. And you can also always email us. So there's lots of options. Okay, that's it for logistics. And I'm going to pass it to Daniel to kind of help us get grounded here.
Wrong button there. Okay. Yeah, welcome everyone. Daniel here. I like to get started with like a somatic practice, basically, like to help us get into our bodies and to arrive more fully, just to be here in the present with each other. And you know, like everything we do today, you know, take what works for you here and leave the rest, in a sense. I'll offer some suggestions of things you can put your attention on and do, and feel free to not do that if it doesn't work for you and do something else. Whatever helps you just to arrive and ground and be present in this moment is what we're going for. For myself, I like to often I often like to just feel where my body meets the earth, in a sense. You know, like now I'm noticing my feet against the ground, and I'm noticing my back against the chair, and I'm just feeling like settling into that a little bit. You know, if I feel my feet, I can feel them softening just slightly, noticing that little sense of compression of my body against the surfaces that are holding me up. And there's a certain sense of support in that. There's a sense of kind of being, you know, being buoyed up and in place here, in my place in the world. And which right now is just here in my office, in my chair, talking with you. After that, I noticed my breath. I just took a deep breath. Maybe you want to experiment with just you're taking a deeper breath, or just noticing how you're breathing. Maybe letting out your breath with a little sigh or a sound. Yeah, letting tensions of the day go a bit. Yeah, thank you. I'm feeling a little more settled. And as I kind of come back from kind of exploring my attention in my own body, I'm looking around my space, my room. I'm, seeing my mouse on the desktop here and the surfaces of the room around me, and looking, oh, look, here's my computer, and look at all these wonderful people I'm in this gathering with. And just invite you to like open up to that sense of curiosity of being here together today. Don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we're here exploring something, and maybe there's even just an inkling of a sense of the possibility of community around the world, of people coming together who are curious about this topic of how do we be better cooperative leaders, better facilitators, to really move our work and move the world forward in some way. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate that, that call for curiosity. It's one that I think that I need often. So thank you. And I'm going to share my screen again. And this is a slide of key facilitation components that I'll be building on throughout, like as we go in and out, and they're a part of our course, but also they're pieces that you can bring in different ways. So I'm sharing what we use and know, but that doesn't mean that that's the only option. So just want to offer that. Okay, so one of the pieces that we approach in this work of cooperative facilitation is a somatic practice. So like a body awareness practice, whatever that looks like. Daniel offered one example. And we think it's super helpful to be able to tune into ourselves and our group and how we want to show up. And or simply noticing how we are showing up and kind of just naming that is happening. And it's a tool in the process, and also more than a tool. So I just want to know that's part of our curriculum and our training. And if you believe this is useful or you're curious about that, then that's an option. And now I want to kind of segue to a space to get to know who's here. And an important part of this course and in improving facilitation is being in community. So we're going to put you all in breakouts and to share a little bit about yourself. You can share really whatever you want. Here are some prompts: your name, your pronouns, location, organization, if that's relevant, and also some of the challenges that you're facing that brought you here today, or what you're excited to learn, or both. So before you do that, Daniel and I will model that for you, and then I'll put you in breakouts. So I'm Rebecca, she, hers, works great, and I live in New Orleans, and I'm the communications lead at Round Sky Solutions, among other organizations. And a challenge that I face in facilitation is knowing my boundaries as a facilitator within meetings, like how much power I really have in that role, especially in new spaces where I'm stepping up. And today I'm really looking forward to this conversation and sharing what we've learned, because I can see these pieces come up in many different contexts of my life in different kind of ways, not even in just meetings or workspaces, but in conversation sometimes, like being able to get at the heart of things. So that is me, and I'll pass it to Daniel.
Thanks, Rebecca. So yeah, Daniel Little, he, him. I live in Vermont. That's the home of the Abenaki people. I'm one of the facilitators and coaches here at Round Sky, also one of the founders of our co-op. And as I was reflecting, I think one of the challenges for me about facilitation is knowing when to stick with an agreed upon process. The kind of the follow the sense of the rules of the road that my team has established, and when to shift gears to meet the needs of the moment when it's actually something else is emerging that doesn't quite fit into our expectations of how things should go. Like how to juggle that as a facilitator is like, that's a tricky moment for me. And today I'm excited to get into new ways of thinking about the different kinds of change that we use to grow our capacity as a facilitator, looking at both new skills and new outlooks, new ways of seeing in a sense. And I'm excited about both of those and getting into that with you all. Thanks.
Nice. Thanks, Daniel. So I'm gonna open the rooms. You'll have about 4 minutes, so 2 minutes each. You're gonna be in pairs. And so I'll open them. Let me know if you are struggling. So do that now. Okay.
Is that working out? I came back because it seemed like I was in a room alone anyway.
Yeah, you were. And it's working perfectly. I'm just gonna set my timer here.
Maybe I'll pause the recording so that's less for the folks who are watching at home, so to speak.
Okay, great.
I'll start it again when we break up.
Great. Welcome back. Welcome back. Sorry if I interrupted you mid-sentence. I know that happens often, almost always.
Maybe muting ourselves again though would be helpful.
Oh, I'm gonna mute us again.
Although that is welcome sounds. I love it. And I'd love if maybe to hear just from a couple people about anything that came up for you. I know it was short, but any things you want to share or insights are welcome. And you can unmute your mic or you can put it in the chat box if that feels better. I'll also stop sharing for a second. Any insights, themes you want to share?
Yeah, I would share. My name is Zoe. I'm based out of Cleveland. I was really excited to share with Julius from Growing Hope. Both of our projects are actually in the food, in like a food, coming from like a food-based place. So with composting being my work and Julius's work being food sovereignty, it was welcoming to have that immediate connection within our work.
Nice. I'm sure if we were in a room, it would be easier to do a show of hands, but I think there are a number of people here in the food systems, food related work. Oh, nice. Glad that you had that connection though. Anybody else want to share before we keep moving?
I'll share only because I saw another baby here that as a facilitator in a housing co-op, even like what time we have meetings or how to facilitate as a mom during bedtime becomes like a real challenge. And if we do have groups of volunteers, what we expect of our volunteers' hours, I think becomes a really interesting question for any group dealing with babies.
That's a great point. Thank you. Thanks. And there's some head nods and there's +1s in the chat on that. Great. So thank you for being here and bringing your full selves, full lives. And I'll pass it back to Daniel to share a little kind of snippet.
Great. I totally lost track of where we are.
That's okay.
Okay, here we are. Oh yes, right. Great. Change. Okay, so we're talking about how we grow, as how we become more confident in our cooperative leadership in various ways, right? So I just wanted to follow up on something that we go over more in the training, which is this distinction between what we call, well, not our idea, but this idea of technical and adaptive change. And I won't go into the depth of that for now, but I just want to ask like a series of questions. You know, what are the parts of learning that you want to undertake that are more technical, that are like learning new concrete skills and tools for your facilitation and leadership? And the other question is, what parts of the learning that you want to do or need to do are more about your own adaptation as a person? How do you personally need to grow and expand, in a sense, into new capacities, new mindsets that would enable you to participate in cooperative leadership at whatever is the next level for you? And if you have ideas about what skills or what mindsets you would find helpful, you can jot them in the chat, or to share with the group as we go along. We'd love to hear from you, or we just invite you to reflect on those things. These two avenues of self growth, in a sense, between the more technical, skill oriented and the adaptive expansion of ourselves into new capacities. So we've designed our course to be not only about tools and structures, but also about this interchange and personal development. One of the pieces of that being the somatic awareness. And we started with that somatic check-in. And together we think that these two things get to the heart of what it means to be a cooperative facilitator. The ways that we need to expand both the tools. It's not just about them, but it's shifting how we use our personhood, our influence, in a deep and consistent and caring way in terms of our ability to work with groups. And yeah.
In addition to that, we're also thinking about how do we kind of see the reality that getting workable collaboration for ourselves and our teams can be quite challenging. And culturally, we have this history and many structures that are based on autocratic leadership and normalized white supremacist culture. And this really shapes how we think about power and facilitation and leadership. And these ways run really deep. So just naming it's hard. And we're creating different ways of leading in our teams, or we're coming back to different ways of leading in our teams. And that means we must lean on cooperative values and principles to guide us in our structures, and other values and principles. And we have a lot to kind of unlearn. And from this point of view, not being confident on the topic of confidence and facilitation really is, I think, expected and normal. And it's partly about being familiar. To us, part of confidence is about being familiar and having practice with something. So we found that in this kind of setting, we're also thinking about how power works and flows within facilitation and within our meetings and our teams and those dynamics. So this is something that we're not going to get into deeply today, but just want to offer that this is part of the work of confident facilitation and of cooperatives, is really tending to that. And we have this tool called the Power Matrix that's on our website. If you're curious about it, I can go try to find it while Daniel's presenting. But it's a way of looking at how to navigate power dynamics in cooperative efforts. And it's in facilitation, we really focus on how do we give power to our participants, and how do we share power between the facilitator and the people that are being facilitated. So Daniel's going to share a little bit about that, how we approach that, and through this process we call tension-driven meetings. And I'll stop there.
Cool. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah. So in order to give power to the participants of a meeting, we have this idea of tension-driven meetings. We've mentioned that a couple of times. I wanted to just first work at the word tension and just briefly define what we're talking about, which is we're using the word tension to mean something that a team member is sensing that needs to be added to the agenda. It's just as simple as that. Something that we're sensing that needs to be added to the agenda. So sometimes we use the word tension just to mean like an agenda item, in a sense, or more like the reason behind an agenda item. It's whatever we're we're sensing, something that we want to announce or discuss or decide something about. And so yeah, I wanted to also, Rebecca just mentioned the power matrix. I wanted to make a link there. One of the things in the power matrix is a distinction between implicit power and explicit power. And one of the things that tension-driven meetings can help us do is to surface things that are implicit that aren't working, things that aren't really spoken about, things that aren't really clear, that might not be working, or there's some opportunity that's missed because they're not clear enough. And so we can take those from implicit and make them more explicit, and through this idea of like letting people sense what they want to talk about and bring that forward, instead of having kind of a top-down sense of how do we even build the agenda. So tension-driven meetings can provide this safer, more powerful setting for the type of work of like taking the implicit power dynamics and making them explicit and doing something about it. And meetings themselves, which are tension-driven meetings, like meetings are such a leverage point in a sense. They're both a pain in the ass. Like we all have too many of them, and they go on too long sometimes, and we've got Zoom fatigue and stuff like that. But they're also a tremendous place of leverage for when our kind of collective intelligence and creativity can come together, and we can have synergy, and we can have things really, they're amplifiers, right? They can either amplify what's not working, or they can amplify what the potential of what could be working or is working in a sense. And so I just wanted to talk about, meetings in a sense as amplifiers. So the structure and kind of process tool that we offer for how to hold a meeting is meant to focus our collective energy and resource us. If we have a clear, explicit way of holding a meeting, and we all share certain expectations about how that's going to go, then it can flow more smoothly. We can be working together in alignment to move our creativity forward in whatever that looks like. So tension-driven meetings, again, we want to make our meetings highly relevant and responsible to our actual collective and individual needs. And so we use this tactic we call tension-driven meetings. It's a practice we learned from Holacracy, one of the other kind of collaborative ways of working together. And these meetings are really participant-focused to address the real concerns of those participating. So I think of tensions as trapped creative action in a sense. And sometimes we use this archery metaphor where each person's creative contribution is their arrow, and the tension that they have is them pulling this bowstring back in a sense. And as a facilitator, our job is to support people in surfacing and bringing up their tensions, and then helping guide the team members through the activities that would process that tension in a sense, help it get to a target that's appropriate and good for the individual that has that tension and for the collective as a whole. So we can also leverage the power of somatics here. You're probably familiar with that term, like the tension, feeling the tension in the room, right? But rather than being something to avoid, of course, if we have a process that's welcoming and safe enough, then those implicit things in the room, those unspoken tensions in the room, can be brought forward to be dealt with and worked with. And I want to also say that tensions can be pleasurable, right? That we're not talking necessarily about only all the negative things. It maybe has a negative connotation, like I'm too tense or something. But it's also again like the joy of pulling that bow back and letting the arrow fly it can be a joyful release of energy. It can be any kind of like creative tension is another phrase that we have in our language, right? So how do we enjoy that sense of creative tension and figuring out how to direct it together to an appropriate outcome? So yeah. Then the primary reason I think that people avoid bringing that creative potential to the table, especially if it is sitting in us and in some kind of uncomfortable way, is whether it might bring up conflict, is because we're afraid that the tension, will be released into the group without some kind of a container that can hold it, that would actually move it to resolution. If we're just going to create chaos and dysfunction, and of course we don't want to bring something up that's maybe a little bit difficult. And we probably all had experiences where tensions erupt and individuals get overwhelmed, and we don't really know how to get through it. We're fixated on the disconnection or the misalignment. But if, as facilitators, we have effective process to guide ourselves and the team through, that helps support us in moving these tensions forward, from getting them named to working through a process to having some form of resolution, then it helps the group build that confidence in their ability to turn a challenging conversation into a meaningful output for the group.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, tensions are one of my favorite pieces of our tools right now. Like the more I think about it, the more deep they are. And I want to share a little bit about why. So part of tension-driven meetings is getting input from the group. So by making your agenda, and you may be doing this in some ways already, is that not only one person is holding the agenda. So you don't necessarily have to prepare tons in advance and like have one person have the sense that they know everything that we're going to talk about, but the group is sensing that. The group is bringing stuff and also owning it. So I think that can be really powerful. So it's like the collective, the individual kind of meets the collective in this space. And it also means that the facilitator is not necessarily deciding what the resolution is. So sometimes groups bring up all these agenda items, and then the facilitator brings us through it and often decides what that resolution is or the outcome is. And in our process, we are really focusing on the person who brought that forward and getting at the why, and they, depending on them to let us know when it's moved forward, which shares power with that person also, and is very effective. So this is also a way to support the facilitator to not have to guess about what's relevant, and the group can collectively name what's relevant to right now. Even if there's an abundance, you can't get to all of those items, the group is still kind of naming what's relevant. And it's very much human-centered. It's about what's the tension piece, and we're calling it attention to kind of open up that it's beyond just business agenda items, but it's what is kind of holding the group back. And so it's very much human-centered in that sense, in a shift. And it, in some ways, demands engagement. It depends on your team to show up and really share what's on their mind. And of course, there's like some work to do to get your team to be ready to do that, but becomes quite a flow. So I'll pass it to Daniel.
Yeah, thanks. Really, we just wanted to give you all the chance to just break into groups again, and to just like sense for yourself, like, and share with your group, like what you might bring forward as a tension. But I'll give a couple of examples, for instance. So like Rebecca might have this tension called responding to emails at the info address, kind of the group email that we have, like who's doing that. So Rebecca might be sensing that something's not working about who's taking responsibility with certain emails. There might be some implicit something that's not clear enough. And so she's bringing it forward to the group. Okay, let's address this and make it more clear. Or partnering with another co-op. Perhaps I'm sensing that there's this opportunity to expand our work with other cooperatives and really take action on the cooperative value of cooperation among cooperatives or something. And there's some like sensing of an opportunity that I have. I'll call that my tension. And then the agenda item I put up is like, hey, let's talk about partnering with someone, with other co-ops. And so that's just an example of like sensing something and how to bring it forward. And we want to place you all back into partners to get to know each other a little bit through just sharing what's on your mind about work, in a sense, what you would want to bring forward to your team. So we'll break you up. We'll just have about 4 minutes each to share. There'll be, yeah, we'll be in breakout groups for a total of about 8 minutes, and you'll have about, let's see what, yeah, and yeah, so just introduce yourself and share what would you want to put on the agenda for your team meeting, and what are you sensing that needs to be said or needs to be worked through. Really want to imagine that you have imagine the ideal situation, that you have a safe and respectful enough team dynamic that you can really bring up just about anything. So the sky's the limit in terms of like what you could say, you know, what you could kind of sense and surface. And yeah, what would you want to get into with your team? Why would you want to get into that? So yeah, those are the questions for your breakout groups. Yeah, so Rebecca just copied those.
Welcome back.
Hi. We came back a few seconds early.
That's okay. Well, I'm glad that you had enough time. That's great.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Sorry if I interrupted you. Hopefully you had a little bit more leeway. I'd love to hear from folks. And anything that kind of came out of that, or any like insights, themes, kind of open-ended. What came out of that for you? And unmute your mic and share. You can put it in the chat box if that feels more comfortable.
Well, I guess I'm ready. This is Rich Ruster.
Great. Hi.
Shall I go?
Yes, please.
Well, one of the things that came out of our share, I live in an intentional community, and the woman that I was speaking with lives in a pretty good size regular residential town or city. But the issue of the difference between taking care of sort of business as usual topics versus deep structural transformational issues that cause a group to look at the foundations of their assumptions, their habit patterns, and become much more challenging, and how challenging it is to create a space to go to that level of change, and then end up with people that are enough on the same page to not just end up sort of getting in conflicts about their deeper values and stuff that don't really get to how do we transform effectively. So that was one thing that kind of came out of my conversation.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great. It really points to one of the things that we also talk about in CoLab is our purpose. You know, we're not going into that today as the topic of today's call, but like having clarity around the sense of purpose of the organization, and knowing kind of like having those discussions around values, around what our mission is, what our vision is for our organization, whatever that is, and creating enough clarity about that so that we have a framework within which to operate, where we do have enough shared, you know, to be able to have those conversations and not just be in such divergent camps that it can't really work very well. In a sense, that is tricky.
And how that's changed over time. Oh, my volume is loud. Sorry. I'll see if I can change that. But how your organization and team's purpose has shifted over time. Maybe it looks a lot different this year than it did 20 years ago in terms of your values or how you live them out. And And that can shake things up, and stir up emotions and fears and excitement also. And other folks want to share out loud?
I was talking to Ren, and one of the things that was sort of a common thread between what we've been thinking about is the question of what we're trying to accomplish in a meeting might maybe better be accomplished via other means, in particular one-on-one conversations, but also other channels of communication. So how do you make that decision about whether something should be on an agenda or whether you should really be pursuing it in other ways, or both? Or
Yeah, good questions. Good questions. Like again, I keep hearing things that point to other aspects of the cooperative, system, or we call collab. It makes me think of like the idea of like, what is the scope of this meeting about? What is the purpose, in a sense, of the mission of this team? And is it inside the mission of this team, or is it outside the mission of this team? In which case, if it's not in this, in the purpose of this particular little grouping, then it shouldn't be in that meeting. In a sense, it should be somewhere else. I'm not sure where, but it does, that's not where it is, things like that. So, but yeah, they're really good questions.
Great themes also of what's going on. I saw lots of head nods when you all are sharing. Maybe one more person wants to share something that came out of their breakout, or something that's kind of bubbling up for you.
I'll share. I was speaking with Sierra, and she brought up a couple of really good ones. The one I was thinking about was, if you're in a space and you have one or two people, similar to the comment earlier from Susan about personality. Like, what if you have one or two people who tend to gravitate towards something sort of negative, and then like I would love to develop the skill to kind of be able to honor that, but also bring it back to, what the group really should be talking about, kind of thing. And then what Sierra brought up was a couple of points. One is that, oftentimes, people have different predispositions to sharing things verbally and within a group. So, some people take up a whole lot of time, and other people just really don't want to be, in the limelight, so to speak. So how do you kind of balance that? And that, to me, tied in with something else, which is, something else she was talking about was, aligning, getting alignment on what the whole point of a particular discussion is, which is, kind of tied to what's our point of being a collective. What's our mission? What's our objective in the medium term and the short term, kind of thing. If there's alignment on that, then that helps the discussion along, I suppose. So a lot of interesting topics, huh?
Yeah, thanks for sharing. We were reflecting also on Susan's comment in the chat, and I don't know if you want to share anything about that, Daniel. There was so much in it, like so much too.
Susan was mentioning like personalities make a big difference, in terms of bringing up tensions, and yeah, that makes total sense. Like similar to what you're saying, Rick, too. Like we have different dispositions and ways of being in the world, like can make a difference. Are we gonna, someone bring something up in a kind of like way that tends to generate conflict and animosity or something like that, versus someone who brings something up in a different way. And yeah, I don't know. One thing I would just say is like, so there's something about like having the getting into a rhythm of a clear process that we know that it takes time. It's trust building over time, basically, right? That we can raise something that's a bit challenging, and we can find our way through to a good outcome, and then we can do that again, and we can do that again, and then we can build our capacity to handle more challenging conversations as we go, because we trust that the container, the the tools that we have and the agreements that we have about how to work together can hold it, and that if the agreements aren't working, that itself could be a tension, and we can keep evolving our way of working together bit by bit as we go, building that kind of trust in each other and in the kind of container of our work together, and the process tools that we've agreed that we want to use together, having that so something about trust building came up for me with that.
And becoming sun-kissed here. And there's something about those moments when people bring up things that kind of stir up conflict or stir up challenge. What if we are neutral about that? And if we have a process to get to resolution, that's okay, that animosity comes up. And it's also it can be fuel for us to know what that's pointing to. So it also, noticing the somatics when those things come up. How do we use our tools to be able to sit in that and what that person is sensing? And what does it say? And I do appreciate the culture call out also. That cultural norms can make a difference in the cultural flows that you have happening and nurturing within your organization. Yeah. Questions that people have. We have a few minutes, like key questions or also want to open up to takeaways if you don't have like a question necessarily, or just a comment that's kind of that you're holding. Those are welcome. And there's lots happening in the chat box, but I just want to also use this airspace as well. Yeah.
I wanted to mention that the work of working collaboratively, it's like way harder than any of us ever thought it was going to be. And we are all like way worse at it than we thought we were. Like, we're all growing, right? And part of that is that growing, but I feel like a lot of people who are attracted to collaborative groups, to co-ops, tend to be very idealistic, and we forget that means that other idealistic people with different ideas are going to be meshing with us, and it's as much external as internal work, right? I really feel like I want to know more about this sensory, because like once we learn ourselves, then we learn how we can interact with others, right? A person is only as challenging as I let them be to me. And once I know how I can work with that person, or if I want to, or, then, it's like, it's better for me. So it is a lot of like this internal work that we get from these like very, very different mirrors. So I'm appreciative of seeing other people like with these struggles that we're all working on, because it helps us to be in relation with each other better.
Yeah, there were a ton of head nods when you were sharing, just so you know, especially around that it's so much harder than we thought. So I just want to name that you're so not alone in that, and it is very hard, and then everything else, kind of all the other layers of the world happening as well, just to name those pieces show up in our team. So just want to offer that. And not to call you out, but Steph, I saw you unmuted at some point. If you wanted to share, you're welcome to. And then okay, no, it wasn't.
It was an accident, and then I realized I was unmuted.
Okay.
And then, uh-oh. But thank you for noticing.
Yeah. We probably have time for another comment. If anybody else wants to share a question or a comment, or a mixture of both, is welcome. Great. I do see some kind of questions within the chat, and one thing that bubbled. Let's see, the resources we can recommend outside of the certification. There's a decision-making toolkit that's free on our website. There's also like a email learning series around our power matrix as well, if that was interesting to you. Those are the first two that come to mind, but I can share more also, but we have a ton of kind of resources on our website. A question came up for anybody? If you put it in the chat box and I haven't responded to it, I may not have seen it. It's moving quickly and I'm trying to be present.
Christopher in the chat talked about challenge of bringing tensions up if there's no space for them in the meetings. And yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like we need to, I mean, like, you know, in terms of like what we recommend is like a whole, we call it the standard meeting practice, right? It's a whole flow of items to go through, you know, where we give space, where the bulk of the meat, in a sense, of the meeting is the tension driven process where people bring what's current and alive to the meeting. And make sure that way we make sure it's really relevant. But we also have standing items, you know, places we call ops reports, things where we can check in on like how are the projects going, you know, things like that. So it's if we have a good flow for our meeting, then we can include those things.
Yeah, good point. Great. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for joining us and sticking around. Feel free to unmute and say bye. And you have our emails. You have my email definitely many times. So feel free to reach out with questions or curiosities. And we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you.